This plane, carrying 200 passengers, took off from the United States with the destination of England. The plane traveled in 2015, reaching its destination from the past, back in 1940 during World War II. Shortly after takeoff, the aircraft encountered a massive lightning storm in the sky. The pilot observed a loop forming within the lightning storm, and suddenly, the plane entered into that loop. After that, everyone on the plane realized that they had arrived where a war was taking place. Numerous warplanes are circling in the sky, engaging in aerial combat. At one point, enemy warplanes attacked them, launching terrifying bombs on them. The pilot of the plane can understand that they are now in a difficult situation, and regardless of what happens, they need to land on the ground from this chaotic airspace. However, at this moment, they have no idea where on Earth they are. They couldn't communicate with the control room on Earth, through which they could coordinate their landing. Hello, friends. If you think this is a fabricated story, then you are entirely mistaken. However, no one has been able to unravel the mystery of how the plane, from the year 2015, suddenly ended up in the year 1940. Until today, no one has been able to uncover this mystery. But to find out whether the plane returned to the present or got lost there, you need to watch the entire video. The film begins within the confines of a passenger plane, IA-42, en route from Dallas to London. Captain William Strong, the pilot, provides an overview of the flight status, indicating an estimated arrival time at their destination of approximately 7 hours. Captain Strong assures the passengers that the weather conditions are ideal and anticipates a smooth journey without any obstacles. There were 200 passengers and 2 captains on the plane. The main captain's name was William, and his co-captain was Daniel. Until then, everything was fine. Passengers and aircrew were all thrilled. However, suddenly a problem is noticed. While the duo is conversing, an unexpected anomaly suddenly takes place. The electronic systems inside the cockpit begin to flicker, prompting Captain Strong to request assistance. Luckily, the ground control reassures them that there are no mechanical issues and the skies ahead are clear. Relieved, the pilots continue their journey. However, as they progress a little further, they suddenly encounter a problem. Afterward, it is observed that intense lightning is flashing across the sky, and the wind is blowing at a very high speed. Due to the fierce wind, the aircraft's stability is compromised. The aircraft is swaying from side to side. The captain couldn't stabilize the aircraft in any way. At that moment, he attempted to communicate again with the control room. However, this time he couldn't establish contact with the control room in any way. The pilot observes that there is no kind of network on the aircraft. Everything seems to have become strangely unusual in a matter of moments. Surprisingly, the man mentions that the storm appeared out of nowhere. Left with no options, Captain Strong strongly urges the passengers to remain in their seats and proceeds to navigate through the storm. Co-pilot Daniel is hesitant about the idea, but the captain insists that it's the only option. After flying for a while, the aircraft loses control. The co-pilot was attempting to regain control, struggling with the controls. Witnessing the aircraft in such a state, all the passengers become very scared. They venture further ahead. Then, a strange incident occurs. The pilot observes that within the ominous thunderstorm in the sky, a spherical object has suddenly formed. Despite the pilot's efforts to maneuver around it, this circular entity, like a magnet, pulls the aircraft into its core. When the aircraft entered the core of the circular entity, a sudden intense turbulence was generated. However, after passing through the circumference of the circle, everything seemed to come to a halt. But as they arrived on this side, they noticed something unusual. While they had bid farewell in broad daylight, here they found a pitch-dark night. But within just 10 minutes, day turned into night, and they couldn't comprehend how this could be possible. As the passengers breathe a sigh of relief, the pilots are astonished to find the skies suddenly plunged into darkness, as if night has fallen. Adding to the bewilderment, all internal signals within the plane have been disrupted. Currently, only the radar is operational, and all communication with ground control has been severed. Everything in the plane was very modern technology, except for the radar, which was an old technology from many years ago. The pilot thinks that perhaps communication with them will be established very quickly from the control room, and everything will return to normal. As panic spreads among the passengers, the pilot informs everyone through the intercom that the disturbance in the sky is due to adverse weather conditions. He assures them that it will be fixed very quickly. The captain and the crew couldn't make sense of where the aircraft was currently located by looking at the radar. Therefore, they attempt to descend the plane slightly to figure out its actual position. But when they don't spot any planes on the radar for the next 30 minutes, they start to feel suspicious. Captain Strong chooses to fly the plane in a loop, hoping to spot another aircraft. Before doing so, he contacts one of the flight attendants, Cameron, instructing her to ensure that everyone is seated as they will be descending. As they descend, they immediately notice several planes circling on the radar. This surprised them greatly, because when they were above, their radar hadn't detected a single aircraft. Seeing these planes, they are very happy. But co-pilot Daniel informs them that the planes visible on the radar are not ordinary passenger aircraft. These planes are flying very quickly. Afterward, they descend the plane a bit more, and then they can see the cities below. They see a large number of fighter planes bombarding a city. Seeing them, they were amazed because below, explosions were happening in every part, and there was intense warfare. That's when they realized that the planes flying around them for so long were fighter jets engaged in a real battle. However, at this time, witnessing the war, the pilot, along with all the passengers on the plane, is extremely surprised and cannot make sense of anything, because they were unaware of any war happening on Earth at this time. Now, a great fear engulfs them all. It felt like a nightmare to them. This causes the passengers to panic, but the flight attendants swiftly reassure them, assuring them that everything will be okay. The captain raises the aircraft again and continues attempting to communicate with the control room. However, he is unable to establish any communication whatsoever. On board, two historians could interpret everything by looking out of the window. They believed that the war unfolding below was the Second World War. Because they were historians, they knew very well what had happened during the World War. Now, looking down from above, they could see exactly that environment. Afterwards, the two historians step forward towards the cockpit to enlighten the pilot about everything. However, the pilots do not allow them to enter the cockpit in any way. They cry out to the pilot, explaining everything, that what they are witnessing below is the Second World War. However, the pilots don't believe any of their words and dismiss them as crazy. The pilot becomes very irritated and orders them to step back. Yet, the two professors cry out, insisting that they have traveled through time for some extraordinary reason and have arrived during the Second World War. Afterwards, a professor notices that there is no network on the plane. Then, he conveys to the pilot once again that what they are saying is true. The war they see below is indeed the Second World War, as history describes it. Furthermore, the modern technologies discovered after 1940 are not supported here, explaining the absence of a network. Inside the cockpit, the pilots are equally astonished. However, before they can thoroughly assess the situation, a group of fighter planes begins to encircle them. Just as an attack seems imminent, they swiftly employ their radar to maneuver out of the firing line, ascending back into the sky. This prevents the imminent danger for the time being, but the passengers become increasingly anxious. Some of them press Cameron for information, demanding to know what's happening. However, she calmly reassures them that everything is under control. Meanwhile, Captain Strong is unsuccessful in reaching anyone on the ground and lacking knowledge about their current location. He opts to descend once more. The plan is to survey the surroundings and determine their exact location. Daniel promptly expresses disagreement, concerned about the looming threat below. However, when the captain notes that they will soon run out of fuel, Daniel agrees. After this, Captain Strong reluctantly grants the two historians 30 seconds to explain their story. Following this, they disclose that the plane was unable to catch any signals due to the scarcity of radio towers on the Western Allied front in 1940. They also indicate that the plane passed through the bombing of Saint-Nazaire, a premeditated Nazi attack on the west coast of France in 1940. Meanwhile, the speculations only infuriate the captain further, and he assumes that the historians are playing games with him. He then instructs them to return to their seats, but not without warning them to keep quiet. Afterwards, the pilot descends the plane further, and they attempt to communicate using the walkie-talkie with any available radio. Right at that moment, they manage to pick up a signal on the radio. Fortunately, they establish contact with a British individual who promptly requests the captain to identify himself. Captain Strong complies and stresses the urgency of their need for immediate assistance. However, the person on the radio, Nigel, remains skeptical about their motives. He believes that capturing a radio signal from an airplane flying at a high altitude is impossible, and rightly so. During the Second World War, the British lacked advanced equipment to intercept long-range transmissions. With time ticking away, Captain Strong implores Nigel for assistance, but Nigel remains perplexed about their identity. Consequently, Captain Strong queries Nigel about the date, and he responds that it's the 17th of June, 1940. This revelation shocks the captain, and they finally come to the realization that the historians are not lying. However, they still struggle to convince Nigel that they are aboard a commercial plane. With no options left, Captain Strong summons the historians and allows them to communicate with Nigel. Bennett makes a rough estimation based on his assumptions and notes that they have passed the location where the Lancastria was sunk. Upon hearing this, Nigel is taken aback because, In his time, the Lancastria is still active. He then resolves to approach his superior to verify if the individuals are telling the truth. As a result, Nigel finally trusts Captain Strong and decides to help him land the plane. However, to achieve that, he requires their precise location. Captain Strong and the historians provide a general estimate of where they might be, but it proves insufficient. Consequently, the co-pilot devises a strategy to illuminate their lights to become visible to the British soldiers. Regrettably, the moment he activates the lights, the Germans spot them first, and a squadron of fighter planes swiftly encircles them. The aircraft is barraged with bullets, plunging the passengers into a state of utter chaos. However, due to the advanced quality of the aircraft in the modern era, it does not easily succumb to destruction. Despite this, Captain Strong remains composed and endeavors to thwart the impending attack. Formulating a strategy to evade the Luftwaffe, he initiates a daring maneuver. On the count of 3, he plunges the plane at a steep angle, almost reaching the ground, only to skillfully pull it back up at the last moment. The Germans attempt to follow suit, but lacking advanced aircraft, they are unable to ascend in time, resulting in a crash to the ground. In the subsequent scene, it is disclosed that Daniel sustained a gunshot wound during the attack, and the aircraft bears multiple punctures. Cameron promptly addresses the situation by plugging the holes and providing first aid to Daniel. Subsequently, Captain Strong resolves to face the frightened passengers. He delegates control of the wheel to one of the flight attendants and steps out. Addressing everyone, he discloses the full extent of the situation and assures them that the crew is making every effort to safely land the plane. However, the recent attack has inflicted damage on the plane's landing gear, necessitating the assistance of volunteers for repairs. Initially, a hushed silence grips everyone, fear palpable in the air. However, soon after, 2 courageous passengers, Teresa and Hector, step forward to volunteer. The trio swiftly makes their way to the tail section of the aircraft to assess and address the damage. Teresa, leveraging her engineering expertise, promptly pinpoints the issue and initiates the repair process. After a determined effort, she successfully addresses the problem, with one final obstacle remaining. The landing gear is obstructed by something. To resolve this, someone must descend and remove the obstruction. Despite Captain Strong's willingness to take the risk, Hector, recognizing the captain's importance, insists on undertaking the task himself, displaying his bravery. Subsequently, he cautiously descends to the landing gear and with the aid of a hammer, skillfully rectifies the issue. Following that, Captain William reestablishes contact with Nigel and informs him of the critically urgent situation. He conveys that they must land the aircraft within the next 40 minutes, as the fuel has already depleted. While they are in the midst of their conversation, 2 German aircraft suddenly launch an attack on the aeroplane. This time, they go a step further and unleash missiles that shatter all the windows of the plane. The passengers are left in a state of shock. In response, Captain Strong adhesives yet another plan to outmaneuver the adversaries. Utilizing his sole piece of equipment, the radar, he skillfully tracks the enemy aircraft. Through clever tactics, he tricks the Germans into colliding with each other, thereby saving the lives of everyone on board. Following the narrow escape, Daniel recognizes the peril of continuously descending, as it could expose their location to the Germans. In a moment of desperation, when hope appears to be dwindling, Bennett presents a solution. He suggests disabling the aeroplane radar and dispatching it to Nigel, enabling him to use it for guidance and lead them to safety. The captains express hesitation about the plan, recognizing the risk involved, but with no alternative, they reluctantly agree. Subsequently, they reconnect with Nigel and outline the details of their plan. Nigel is taken aback by their willingness to relinquish their best weapon, but agrees to assist them. The pilots subsequently reached a consensus to surrender the radar at a designated location and commence preparations for the handover. In the following scene, the flight attendants begin a frantic search through the luggage, desperately seeking anything useful to cushion the landing. At that moment, an elderly man hands them a collection of toy parachutes, mentioning that he had picked them for his grandchildren. Following this, the preparations for the drop commence. They swiftly wrap the radar in a thick layer of clothes and suspend it with the toy parachutes. In due course, they arrive at the designated spot, release the device from the plane, and promptly inform Nigel about the maneuver. Regrettably, the package lands perilously close to the Swiss-German border, and the Nazis discover it first. In a critical moment, members of the British Army arrive at the scene, triggering an intense shootout between the 2 factions. Fortunately, the Nazis are overcome, and the British forces secure the package, subsequently delivering it to Nigel. Without wasting any time, Nigel promptly sets up the radar inside his base and begins operating it. Using the device, He guides Captain Strong until they reach a secure location. At this juncture, the aircraft is perilously low on fuel, prompting the captain to urgently request Nigel to identify a landing spot as quickly as possible. While scanning the area, Nigel suddenly detects a substantial blip on the radar that doesn't resemble any aircraft. Surprisingly, the blip reveals itself to be another storm, reminiscent of the one that transported them into this world. Recognizing the limited fuel situation, Captain Strong proposes the daring option of navigating through the storm, as they lack sufficient fuel to land elsewhere. Captain Strong bids Nigel farewell, expressing gratitude for his assistance. Following this, he addresses the passengers, informing them about the upcoming journey through another storm. With a hopeful outlook, he suggests the possibility of meeting again soon. Captain Strong then prepares himself and, alongside Daniel, steers the aircraft into the heart of the storm. Fortunately, their plan proved successful, and the aircraft was teleported back to the present time in Berlin. Ground control establishes contact, informing them that the entire runway has been cleared for landing. Finally, after 6 hours of chaos and terror, Flight IA-42 successfully touched down. In the movie's closing scene, the passengers jubilantly celebrate the safe landing and gradually disembark. After some time, Captain Strong also exits the cockpit and discovers the same old man sitting alone inside the plane. He is engrossed in writing a book titled The Radar System That Saved Europe. The movie concludes with the revelation that the old man is none other than Nigel himself, adding a poignant touch to the narrative. For more recaps like this, please subscribe to our channel.